Some of the most powerful people on the planet love the spotlight until the spotlight turns on them. That's when the masks slip, the egos crack, and the walkouts begin. Presidents, rappers, YouTubers, fighters, you name it, I've faced them. And when the questions get tough, when the truth cuts a little too close, the reaction is always the same: rage, deflection, and eventually, the dramatic exit. Tonight, we revisit the most explosive walkouts I've ever witnessed. From a fuming ex-president to a superstar rapper on the brink to a cocky internet fighter who thought promotion mattered more than conversation. These are the moments where power met accountability and decided to run. They say pressure reveals character, and nowhere is that truer than when someone decides to walk out of an interview. A walkout is not just about leaving a chair empty, it's about leaving the questions unanswered. It's a tactic, a statement, and sometimes a tantrum. When the conversation gets uncomfortable, when the truth's being confronted cut too close to the ego, that's when the bravado crumbles. Suddenly the person who claimed to be fearless, outspoken and brutally honest can't take the heat. They slam the table, mutter an insult and storm off camera. But here's the reality: walking out doesn't end the debate. In fact, it amplifies it. It tells the world you've run out of answers, that you would rather escape than explain. And that's why these moments are so revealing. They expose something raw about human nature, particularly for the powerful. People who build their careers on being larger than life, untouchable, unstoppable, often find it unbearable to face tough questions they can't control. When they can't dominate the room, they flee it. And yet, the irony is this: the walkout often becomes the headline. The dramatic exit overshadows everything else. Millions of viewers don't remember the polished talking points or the carefully rehearsed lines. They remember the moment the guest's composure cracked. That flash of genuine emotion, that split second of vulnerability, lingers longer than any scripted soundbite. The walkout is theater, it's drama, but it's also truth. Because if you're confident in your argument, if you believe in your principles, you stay, you debate, you fight your corner. Leaving the stage only proves the very point you're trying to escape. That's why walkouts matter. They are not moments of strength, they are moments of weakness. They are not victories, they are admissions of defeat, played out live, in front of the world. He walked into the room radiating the kind of confidence only a former president can summon. Chin high, smile fixed, eyes glinting with that familiar mix of charm and menace. For the first half hour, it was all theater, jokes, boasts, carefully rehearsed one-liners. But scratch beneath the surface, press a little harder, and suddenly the mood shifted. The temperature in the room dropped, because the one thing he cannot tolerate is being challenged on the subjects that prick his pride. The election, the storm of lies and conspiracies that continue to swirl around his legacy. The questions were simple, direct, the kind every leader should be able to face. But he bristled. He leaned forward, voice rising, insisting he had been wronged, betrayed, cheated. The charm gave way to fury. His eyes narrowed, his words sharpened, and you could feel the tension humming in the air like static before a storm. It wasn't the first time he'd been pressed about these things. It won't be the last. But here's the truth: he didn't want answers on record. He wanted control. He wanted the room to bend to his version of events, to his reality. And when it became clear that wasn't going to happen, he did what he so often accuses others of doing: he quit. The walkout wasn't quiet. It was loud, deliberate, a performance in itself. His aides flustered, trying to stage manage the exit, but the damage was done. Millions of people watching around the world saw a man who could fire back insults with ease, but who could not handle a question he didn't like. They saw a leader who thrived in rallies in front of adoring crowds, but struggled when confronted with inconvenient truths. That's the paradox of power. The bigger the figure, the more fragile the ego. His exit that day wasn't just about leaving a chair empty. It was about leaving behind the notion that strength is proven by never being questioned. In reality, the moment he stormed out, he proved the opposite. He arrived full of fire, unpredictable as ever, determined to turn the conversation into his stage. For the first few minutes, it was almost calm, intense but controlled. Then the questions turned to the tweet, the one that had ignited outrage across the world. Suddenly the atmosphere shifted. The smile faded, the energy darkened, and what followed was a torrent of deflection, anger, and raw emotion. Every time the issue was raised, he dodged. Instead of addressing the pain caused, he launched into monologues about contracts, about industries stacked against him, about shadowy forces pulling the strings. Some of it was valid frustration, years of genuine grievances in the music business, but none of it excused what had been said. That was the line. That was the moment he couldn't accept, because to admit the words were wrong meant admitting weakness, and weakness was something he simply couldn't allow himself to show. The questions kept coming sharper, more insistent. Why phrase it that way? Did he realize the damage? Would he apologize? Each time, the fury deepened. He accused the room of having an agenda, of being part of the problem. He turned the conversation into a battle about race, about identity, about power. At one point, the tension was so thick you could feel every word hanging like smoke in the air. And then came the explosion. Interruptions, insults, the refusal to let the dialogue continue. Eventually, the walkout arrived, not with calm dignity, but with chaos. He tore off the headphones, dismissed the conversation, and stormed away, leaving silence where answers should have been. That moment told its own story. It wasn't about music or contracts or industry conspiracies. It was about accountability, the refusal to simply look into a camera and say, "I got it wrong." The irony, he didn't silence criticism, he amplified it. The walkout became the headline, the proof that beneath the bravado, the superstar who claimed to speak truth without fear couldn't face his own. And that is the tragedy of it. Because in choosing drama over dialogue, he let the world see the cracks behind the confidence. He strutted in with the swagger of a prize fighter, the grin of a showman, and the cockiness of someone who believes every room should bend to his presence. At first, it was all bravado, bragging about numbers, about knockouts, about how he'd conquered the world of YouTube and was now rewriting the rules of boxing. For a while it was entertaining. He was sharp, quick with the sound bites, and eager to paint himself as the disruptor nobody could ignore. But scratch beneath the surface and the cracks appeared. The moment the questions stopped being about promotion and started being about substance, his demeanor shifted. Instead of proving his passion for the sport, he grew defensive. When pressed about credibility, about whether his fights were more circus than competition, the confidence faltered. Suddenly the rehearsed lines weren't enough. The irritation bubbled to the surface, his tone sharpened, and the mask of easy charm began to slip. The exchange spiraled quickly. Asked why he ducked tougher opponents, he bristled. Asked about critics who dismissed him as a sideshow, he scoffed. But the more the conversation pressed, the more it was clear he wasn't there for a real dialogue. He was there to sell tickets, to keep his name in the headlines. He said it himself in the ender. This wasn't about truth or scrutiny, it was about promotion. And when it became clear the interview wouldn't play entirely on his terms, he snapped. Off came the mic, off came the patience. He dismissed the questions as irrelevant, accused the room of wasting his time, and stormed out with the arrogance of someone who thought the walkout itself was part of the show. But here's the thing. It wasn't a show, it was an exposure. Millions watching saw beyond the bravado, beyond the rehearsed swagger. They saw someone who could talk endlessly when in control, but who crumbled when the narrative slipped away. The meltdown wasn't proof of dominance, it was proof of fragility. In that one dramatic exit, the fighter who claimed to fear nobody revealed he couldn't even stay in the ring of conversation. Strip away the noise, the personalities, the headlines, and what remains is a truth far bigger than any single walkout. These moments aren't just about one celebrity storming off in a fit of ego. They're about what happens when power is forced to face accountability. It's the collision between image and reality. People who build empires on being untouchable suddenly find themselves exposed, cornered by questions they cannot spin, confronted by truths they cannot dismiss. And rather than fight their corner, they flee. That's why these walkouts matter. They are windows into character. When someone leaves mid-conversation, they're telling the world that control matters more than clarity, that pride matters more than truth. They don't just abandon a chair, they abandon the chance to prove their case. And the irony is brutal. In trying to protect their legacy, they end up damaging it. The footage of them leaving becomes more powerful than anything they said while seated. But it also speaks to something deeper about us as an audience. We live in a time when authenticity matters more than ever. People are tired of polished PR, of sound bites rehearsed by teams of strategists. They want the unscripted, the raw, the unfiltered. And nothing feels more authentic than the moment someone loses their composure. When the mask slips, when the exit becomes the only option. It's messy, it's dramatic, it's human, and that's why it resonates. In the end, walkouts don't just reveal the fragility of the powerful. They reaffirm the value of asking difficult questions. Because if questions didn't matter, if truth didn't matter, nobody would feel the need to run from them. These exits prove that holding people to account still works. They show that no matter how famous, wealthy, or influential someone may be, a single uncomfortable question can unravel the entire performance. And that is the bigger picture. Walkouts are not endings, they're revelations. They strip away the act and leave behind something real. Sometimes ugly, sometimes petty, but always honest. What all of this proves is simple: the walkout is never just about leaving a chair empty. It's about what happens in the moment someone decides they cannot or will not face the heat. From political giants to music icons to internet fighters, the pattern is always the same. When the questions pierce through the armor, when the reality doesn't align with the myth they've built around themselves, the instinct is to escape. But here's the uncomfortable truth: walking away never silences the question. It makes it louder. It doesn't bury the criticism, it amplifies it. The dramatic exit becomes the headline, the defining clip replayed millions of times, while the answers that could have reshaped the narrative are left unsaid. That's why these moments matter. They're not just about drama or entertainment, they're about accountability. They remind us that no one is above scrutiny, no one is untouchable. And for all their power, money and influence, the people who storm out only end up revealing something very human: fear. Fear of being exposed, fear of losing control, fear of admitting fault. So when you see a walkout, don't just see a tantrum, see a revelation. Because strength is staying in the chair, answering the tough questions, and proving your convictions can withstand the fire. Walking away, that's not strength, that's surrender. And history will always remember the difference.